Hey guys, welcome to the PvP guide video for Guild Wars 2. Today we'll be going over the Ranger and its Power Ranger build. I was going to go over a condi build for the Ranger, which is equally as fun as this build, but I decided to start with this one because I've been having a blast with Power Ranger, getting to know how to play it and stuff. Again, when I talk about other classes besides the ones that I main, I want to say that I'm not an expert at Ranger. I can tell you about all of the different mechanics and the things that go on with the Ranger. I can't tell you how to play it well. That's up to you to practice it and to play it as much as you can if you really want to be a good Ranger. So I can't tell you how to be a good Ranger, but I can tell you how to play Ranger. That's what I wanted to say. Anyway, let's keep going. So Power Ranger is growing in popularity lately. Actually, I see a lot of Rangers overall in general lately. I think that has to do with some buffs that the PvP balance several weeks back had to do with. One of them being majorly with one of our heals. We heal as one, which is the heal shout, that actually got buffed slightly, actually quite significantly. Now I'll go into the difference, difference between what it was before and what it is once we get to those parts of the video. As usual, we'll be going over the specializations, the PvP build, and the utilities, and then after that, we go over some tips that I have for you guys that will help you out learning how to play Ranger. So for this build, I'm not really sure whether it is how similar this build is to any sort of website like MetaBattle has. I haven't looked at those Ranger builds. I decided to come up with my own that I actually thought worked really well. It's a much more defensive build than you would probably if you really want to go like really ham and just kind of do lots of damage. You probably wouldn't want to go with just the specialization setup, but this is what allows me to survive a long time and deal as much damage as possible. And I consider that being alive longer allows me to do more damage, so that's my reasoning for it. Anyway, the three specializations we'll be talking about are Wilderness Survival, Marksmanship, and Beast Mastery. And I'll talk about Beast Mastery because it's actually quite strong. But first, in Wilderness Survival, our minor traits are Natural Vigor, which increases our endurance generation by a flat amount, which is pretty useful. We have Companion's Defense, so we gain protection when we dodge, basically. And then we also get Bark Skin, which we take less damage while health is above 90% health, which helps out a little. Our minor trait, or not our minor trait, our depth trait is Oakheart Salve, and this we bring because, it gives us pretty much permanent regen almost, about 50% regen uptime if we're like in the midst of a fight. It also reduces our damage we take while we have regeneration by a small amount. I really wish they'd buff this trait up because 5% doesn't really mean much. Maybe be 10% since it is a 50% ratio. You get 5 seconds of regen every 10 seconds if you have poison on you and stuff. So really good trait. The other traits aren't really that worth bringing. If you really, there's a falling trait and there's a trait that makes your pet deal extra condition damage. Although this trait would be interesting if you're running condition build and you were running this trait line, since the pets now have condition damage, which is one of the buffs that they made to Ranger. The other trait we're taking, master trait, is Shared Anguish. This is really pretty much like you want to take this trait. This is the mandatory trait on this line, because it, when you get hit by CC, your pet takes it instead. So if you get hit by like a Guardian's Hammer 4 Banish, your pet will go flying instead of you. If you get stunned by a warrior by their hammer, your pet gets stunned. Now remember, it's on a 60-second cooldown, so it's a significant cooldown, but it can help you survive if you get jumped on by like a thief or something. And then the other traits here aren't really worth bringing unless you're doing condition damage. You bring a torch. You can look into this if you're running more condition-based build, which I will talk about later in the week probably. I have to figure out if I'm going to talk about that build. But these are more condition-based traits you could bring. And our Grandmaster is Wilderness Knowledge. This gives us our, basically, it's a really great trait. All our survival skills will reduce recharge, they grant fury, and remove conditions. So this is a really big condition removal that we have. And we're bringing 3 survival skills, so that means 6 conditions can be removed in total, and that reduces the recharge of all of them, and they're all very useful that we'll be bringing. The other Grandmasters, again, there's Empathic Bond, which is actually pretty good. So if you feel like you're taking too much condition damage and you have a really tanky pet, I guess, you could bring this. Basically, every 10 seconds, pets take conditions from you. So every 10 seconds, take 3 conditions from you, puts it on themselves. So that'd be nice, although it doesn't really work well with really like squishy pets because they instantly die, and then kind of the benefit of that is left lost. That's where, like, back in the day, when the game first came out, there was bear bows, which just have bears walking around with like millions of health, and they could survive all the condis. There's Poison Master, which we don't really take because, I mean, it's not really that amazing. The second specialization line we're taking is Marksmanship. This is our kind of our damage specialization. So the minor traits are Opening Strike. So our first, we'll get a, when you start out, you'll have a buff called First Strike. It's actually down here if you look, Opening Strike. Basically, our next attack is an Opening Strike, and it causes 5 vulnerability. And this is actually important because it synergizes with our other minor traits. So our other minor trait is Alpha Training. It gives our pets Opening Strike, and Opening Strikes always critical, have a critical hit. So it's a 100% critical chance on an Opening Strike, and you get the Opening Strike when you enter combat. So when you are out of combat, you'll get the Opening Strike again, but while you're in combat, you won't gain the Opening Strike. So it's kind of like a nifty first hit, kind of hard hitting trait kind of thing going on. Our adept trait is Signet of the Wild. I bring this because it gives stability and might and increased damage, and it makes us gigantic. I mean, who doesn't want a gigantic lizard walking around? But besides that, it does increase our movement speed by 50% health, 50%. It increases our damage by 25%, gives us 3 stacks of might from another trait, and gives us 5 stacks of stability. So we get this Signet of the Wild when our health drops below 50% health. So you'll get a giant like damage boost and survivability boost when it comes to that. The other traits are Predator's Instinct, but we don't really need to apply Cripple since we're a Ranger. We're using Longbow, and the other one is Clarion Bond. Now, some people bring this because it does give a blast. So when you swap your pets, you get Call of the Wild, which is a Warhorn skill that is a blast finisher. It gives might 3 stacks, or gives 3 stacks of might, fury, and swiftness, and applies to everyone. So I mean, if you really want a guy to have another, like, I mean, this is more useful when you are running Warhorn, because then you could do like double Call of the Wild kind of deal. But I don't take that. I take this because of the survivability aspects of it, and also for the damage increase. Our master trait is Brutish Seals. You could bring, now before I talk about it, you could bring Steady Focus if you wanted to, which increases our damage by 10% flat while our endurance is full. But I bring this because reducing the recharge on our Signet of Stone, which I'll talk about in a bit, I think is more important. I think survivability is more important since damage is so high and there's so much cleave going on. I think if you really want to survive as a Ranger, I think Signet of Stone would be the way to go if you're going Power Ranger. There's other ways, other builds don't need it as much, but this build that I'm running does need it, and I think it saved my butt quite a bit. The other one's Mode of Clarity. This is basically you gain attack of opportunity when you interrupt a foe. So basically your next attack is 50% stronger, and your days and stun durations last 100%, just basically doubled. So it's not, it's okay. I mean, if you want to take more damage, go ahead. It's up to you. So you can try it out. Just try it out a little bit. But I prefer the Brutish Seals for myself. And for the Grandmaster trait, we'll be bringing Lead of the Wind. I think this is mandatory just because it's an amazing trait. So the way that it works is while you have a longbow, your attack speed is increased, your arrows pierce, and all your longbow skills recharge faster. A little bit of history behind this. This used to be called Read the Wind, and back in the day, Ranger longbow attacks used to travel so slow. Like the actual projectile used to go so slow that it barely hit anyone. Then they came out with a new trait for the Ranger called Read the Wind that increased the projectile speed of your arrows. And I think it did. I think it also, no, there was another, it didn't reduce the recharge. That's all it did, basically. I think it was a Grandmaster. And when they made the specialization change, they kind of combined them together, and actually they made the actual, like, projectile speed increase base. So basically your projectiles always travel really fast, and this just complements them really well. So this is a really good trait. There's other ones, Remorseless. Again, if you regain Opening Strike when you gain Fury, this could be useful, I guess, if you want to deal more damage. So like if you have constant Fury uptime, like just applications of fury, which we do with our survival, wilderness survival, but I think this is more useful than that. And there's Predator's Onslaught, and you and your pet deal increased damage to impaired foes, those that have stun, taunt, daze, cripple, fear, immobilize, and chill. So, I mean, if you want more damage, you go with those, but I think this is much better. And then onto Beastmastery. Now, this is probably the really strong trait line. Actually, I never even noticed how strong it was until I started experiencing what was going on to me as I was fought rangers. So we'll talk about the minor traits. The minor traits are Pack Alpha. Your pet is more powerful, and their skills gain reduced reduction. So your pet skills, all their skills basically, even the one that you can use, and we'll talk about pets in a bit. If you don't know what they are. If you don't know how pets work, I'll talk about that too. But this increases everything basically, their power, precision, toughness, vitality, and all their skills are reduced recharge. The other minor trait is Loud Whistle. So while your health is below the threshold, which is 90%, your pets deal more damage, and your pet swap gains recharge reduction. So pet swapping basically is kind of like, if you play an element, it's kind of like the attunement swapping, except it's for your pet. But although it doesn't like proc any sort of sigils, it just kind of swaps. So it's like a swap on a cooldown, basically. So that gets a reduced recharge, which is really cool. And Pet's Prowess, your pets move faster and deal more damage on critical hits. So their Ferocity is increased, and they move 30% faster. It's super speed. It's just like, they're really fast. You should see this Mr. Squiggles. You should see him just like waddle everywhere. It's really scary. The Adept trait is Resounding Timber. Now, okay, so you might be asking, but Raz, why don't you take a Go for the Eyes? If you know anything about the Ranger, you're asking, why don't you go for the Eyes? I'll say, you can bring Go for the Eyes. Go for the Eyes is basically your bet game toughness, but the main part of it is when you use their command skill, they apply blindness to foes around them. So that's really strong, and it doesn't have a cooldown, so the only cooldown you're waiting for is the actual pet skill that you're using. But since the heal got buffed, we heal as 1, and it's a shout. This one's really cool. Resounding Timber. Shouts apply regeneration and swiftness to allies, and reduce charge on shouts. So our used to be a 20-second heal is now a 16-second heal, and applies regen and swiftness. And not only that, because of it, and we'll actually I'll talk about how that synergizes with this trait really well with their pet and stuff. So I thought it was really cool and interesting. I like it. I think it's really cool. Gives us some extra regen to everyone. It's kind of a buffing thing. So if you don't like it, you can bring the blindness, but I don't usually need the blindness. Our master trait is Two-Handed Training. This basically applies to our greatsword that we'll be using. Greatsword and spear damage is increased, and those skills recharge faster. Greatsword and spear attacks have a chance to apply Fury on hits. So again, more Fury stuff. If you really wanted to go for Remorseless, you could do that, because this has a chance to apply Fury and stuff. So you could do that as well. There's some synergy there. The other traits aren't really that great. I guess if you wanted Wilting Strikes, you could apply Weakness when you use your command skill. And Natural Healing, I mean, our pets regen out of combat. So this, I don't think this trait has any real use, because if we're out of combat, our pet automatically heals, so it doesn't really matter. And our Grandmaster trait, probably really, I think, to be honest, this is probably the strongest trait we have. Beastly Warden. Basically, when we use our command skill, our pet taunts people around them. So this is like a CC skill, basically. It's pretty much a CC skill, because taunt just comes out of nowhere. Unless you can, I mean, now that it can be dodged and blocked, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's still just as easy, really. I mean, it isn't that much harder to get this off, because no one ever pays attention to the pet when they're fighting a ranger. So your pet just comes around behind them, does a taunt, and you can just like do a full combo and stuff. And we'll talk about that in the tips and tricks part, where you can do some fun things with your pet and stuff to help you apply damage more easily. The other traits, there's Zephyr's Speed. So when you swap pets, you gain might and quickness. When you swap pets, I said that twice. I mean, it's only 3 seconds of quickness and 3 stacks of might for 15 seconds every 15 seconds. So I mean, it's not really that strong. I guess if you wanted to have quickness every 15 seconds, I mean, it's up to you. The other one's Honed Axes, and we're not using axes, so this doesn't even apply. So that was a specialization. So this is kind of like a power ranger slash like supporty slash survival ranger. Basically, we're going around the fact that we're trying to survive as much as possible, but also do damage. So just giving the ranger a bit more survivability with our taunts, with our wilderness knowledge, and all that other stuff. So hopefully this can, and it's worked so far. I've actually really enjoyed this build. On to the weapons and sigils and etc. We'll be using, obviously, longbow, and we're using greatsword. So this combination is usually, it's kind of like the very generic, stereotypical ranger setup with longbow, because you really can't bring it. There's no other power weapon that's melee. I mean, there's kind of axe, and there's kind of warhorn, but axe has a lot of condi stuff, and warhorn doesn't. I mean, you do have the birds, but I mean, it doesn't really do much damage. It's more buffy. So greatsword's actually a really strong weapon. I think it's probably one of their best weapons, to be honest. Besides, like, I don't know, like offhand dagger or something like that. But we'll talk about the longbow first. We bring the longbow. We have all the awesome skills, and you know what? I probably won't go over all of them just because you can just find that for yourself. But the one I will try to highlight is point blank shot. This is your CC skill, and CC ranger's all about like CCing to keep people away. That's what you want to do. So just remember that the closer the person is to you, the farther you knock them back. When it has a 1200 range, but if they're really close to you and you shoot them with this skill, they'll skyrocket. They'll just go, you know, right out of there. You know, it's really useful, and there's some cool combos you can do with that with the greatsword that I'll show you in a little bit. On the longbow, we bring fire and air just for maxi damage, just all the damage. You want all that damage when you hit number 2, the rapid fire. You want to have all the procs. You just want to have all that damage come out. And another really important thing is you can actually, instead of bringing fire, because fire does less damage than air, you could bring leeching if you wanted to get some extra like health or something, or you could bring like generosity if you really are afraid of condis and stuff. But I do suggest just these two on the longbow. If you really wanted to fiddle around with the sigils, I would do it on the greatsword, since that's kind of like doesn't rely on too much. Speaking of the greatsword, we'll go over a few key skills here. The first one we'll go over is this hilt bash. This is pretty much your stun / daze. So the way that it works is if you hit them from the front, you daze them. So it's like you're hitting them in the head, the front of the head. You know, when you get hit by the front of the head, you kind of like feel dazed, you know. But if you hit them from the back, you stun them, and your pet does deal increased damage. So the important thing is don't worry too much about hitting from the back or the front. I'll actually show you a cool way to get an easy back hit with the hilt bash using your elite skill. And the other important skill is swoop. This is your get out of jail card. Like, this is get out of dodge. This is the skill you never really want to use this to attack people, although it does have a pretty high base damage. You can use to attack people, and I do frequently use it to gap close if I'm really trying to chase someone down. More often than not, I find myself using it to get away from sticky situations, especially since the end of the swing. So while you're using it, you have like this bird effect, and you'll have this bird, you'll like kind of dash a direction, and at the end you kind of do a swing with your sword to attack. At that swing, you have evasion frame, so you're evading at that point. So it's a good escape skill. And we'll talk about counter block and maul in the tips and tricks portion. And the sigils on the greatsword, I bring energy and intelligence. Energy because we don't have a huge amount of vigor. Yeah, we have natural vigor, so we get just a 20% increased endurance regen, but we don't have any real natural vigor coming from anything. So the way that we get through this is by energy sigils, and especially if you start fighting someone up close. And I'll talk about this, where there's kind of a range where you switch kind of modes. This is what I've kind of found out. You kind of switch modes when you're in melee and when you're in range, because in range you're not spending a whole lot of time dodging and stuff, while in melee you're just kind of defending against an attacker. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But intelligence I bring because, say you are attacked by, I don't know, a thief, which is usually what these, rangers are usually a target of thieves mostly, or Ellies sometimes, and warriors. Pretty much everyone. Rangers are kind of like the aggro bait pretty much, but if you have an attacker and they're attacking you and you have your longbow out and you attack them in their stuff in your combat, you can get some nice damage off because you can just swap to Greatsword, hit them with the hilt. Hopefully they stunned, even if they're dazed, it's okay. And you can just slam down with the maul and you get a nice crit maul. Crit maul, that sounds really nice. Crit maul. So your maul will 100% critical chance from the Intelligence Sigil. You don't, I wouldn't suggest like spending too much time like focusing on the Intelligence Sigil, like, oh my god, I gotta get that Intelligence Sigil to proc on my maul. Don't worry about that too much, but if it happens, it's just like a supplementary thing that if you do manage to get it off, it's very rewarding. So, as far as runes go, I bring Pack, because swiftness duration is nice, and Fury obviously is really nice, but you could also bring, I found myself sometimes bringing Rune of the Ranger. I know it's kind of tacky and, whatever, but it does give you a really decent bonus in damage overall. Pretty much it increases your ferocity and your precision, and it has a flat damage increase while you have your companion active if he's alive. So that's really useful. You could also bring, if you really are having a hard time surviving, you can bring Rune of Vampirism. You will suffer a little bit of damage loss, but your survivability will go straight up with this rune, so you can trade them off depending on how you feel. I prefer Rune of the Pack because, YOLO, whatever. And obviously our amulet is Marauder. There's not really anything else you could bring if you want to go Power Ranger. I mean, if you really wanted to go true ham, you could bring Zerker, or Assassins or whatever, but I mean, Marauder's just better because we're just better. And that's the PvP build. That's the weapons, sigils, and stuff. Let me go over our utility skills next. Skills. Our heal is, we heal as 1, as I've said previously. Now, the way that this heal works, and I'm going to talk about it, how it got changed and is amazing now. Basically, the shout works as you heal yourself and your pet, and you each gain a copy of those boons. So, for example, say I have protection and regen, and my pet has swiftness and fury. When I use we heal as 1, we copy, I get the swiftness and fury from him, from my pet, and the pet, gets my regen and whatever the other one, protection, or regen and protection to him. So then we have all the boons that we have. This is great because say you're on a ledge, I mean, if you know PvP maps, faux fire, Legacy of faux fire, standing on a ledge, just pew-pewing away at someone, and your pet's out there fighting stuff, and you have him like waddling around, and he gains boons because he's down there in the midst of the fight. Suddenly you become under attack. You take a huge chunk of damage. You heal, and all of a sudden you have all these boons on you. You have stability, protection, whatever your pet has gotten, you will get, and whatever you have, your pet will get. So that's one reason I bring this trait, Resounding Timber, not only because it gives the cooldown reduction, which is very useful and a really strong heal. I mean, this heals for a lot. It also applies the regen and swiftness to my pet. So it's kind of really cool in that little synergy there. I think it's really cool little synergy. Again, you could always bring, the go for the eyes, but whatever. Yeah, I like this one. It's funner. It's funner. It is funner. Our 3 utility skills are Signet of Stone. This is really just mandatory because it gives us an invuln. It really just works as like Endure Pain. It lasts a little bit longer. The passive is you gain a little bit of toughness while it's out, but when you use it, you and your pet take no damage from attacks, but you're still susceptible to crowd control and conditions. So you can still be conditioned down, you can still be CC'd, but you are immune to damage, straight up physical damage. So it's really useful for surviving. Now, this other utility is Quickening Zephyr. I have fallen in love with. This is my favorite skill in the Ranger, because I'm a big fan of super speed. As you probably have noticed if you watch my Fresh Air video, I love super speed. I think it's a cool thing, because in combat, it just makes you go, whoa! So this is I use this for mainly defensive purposes. I never really use it for offensive, and I will give you a tip for free right now. I will give you a tip. Do not use this offensively. It is not at all an offensive trait. You should not use it as an offensive trait. It clearly is a survival trait, as it says. It states there, right there it says survival. It is a survival trait. Do not use it to, I want to get a really fast rapid fire off. No, don't do that. That just ends in failure, because then now you're out a condi cleanse, a break stun, and super speed, which, if you don't know what super speed does in combat, it makes you move really fast in combat. If you notice while in combat you move slower, yeah, don't worry about that when you super speed. This I frequently use if I don't have my great sword up, or if I don't have my my swoop up. I'll use this to get away. Like, I will seriously hit this quickening zephyr to just get away, to just run away, because a lot of times you just don't want to have an upfront fight with someone because you know you're gonna lose. You know you're gonna have a hard time, so you just want to get out. Or if you're in the middle of a fight and you just don't want to be in the middle of all that cleave and stuff, use it to get out. Use it to break stun. Use it to get away and break stun. That is all you want. And if you manage to get away fast enough and still have it up, hey, get off some damage if you want to, but do not, for any circumstance, use this skill for offense. That is my tip. That is the big tip for the day. You know, before we have all the other tips coming up. And the other survival skill in our utility bar is lightning reflexes. Again, another mandatory skill because it gives us an evade, it gives us vigor, it gives us fury, it gives us a condition. It not only removes immobilize, but also then it removes 2 other conditions. So it's a three condition remover. And it's also break stun, so a really strong skill on a 32-second cooldown, really useful. And I really can't recommend anything else to bring than those. I mean, these, I mean, you could bring something. I mean, there really isn't anything else you could bring. Nothing really amounts to much besides these. I mean, a lot of people, no one brings this skill, Protect Me, and I see a lot of newer rangers bring this skill. It isn't that great. It is not as good as Signet of Stone. And yeah, it's a stun break, but it, for one, Signet of Stone, if you've noticed, does not prevent you from capturing points. Protect Me does. So you can be invulnerable in a point and still be capturing it. So, I mean, that might be a flaw in programming or whatever, but still, it is noticeable. And any of those other survival skills are not really great. Sharpening Stone, nah. Not really that great for your build, and not really great at all, to be honest. And it's not even interesting. And Muddy Terrain, I guess if you wanted to like slow people down or whatever, but again, it's both lightning reflexes and quickening zephyr are the way to go. And for our last skill, we have Entangle. This is again another survival skill. And more often than not, I use this as a defensive skill, but sometimes I do use it as an offensive skill. It can be used in both, and it doesn't really matter because it's an elite on a 48-second cooldown. I mean, that's pretty strong. Basically, what it does is when you activate it, you'll do this kind of stomp animation, and it entangles everyone around you in these roots that immobilize and apply bleeding. And they do some damage, but the main thing is that they immobilize. It's unblockable, so it's a really nice like soft CC for people around you. So if you're in a really sticky situation and you really need to get away, you can entangle and quickly zephyr and go woo out of there, or you can entangle and swoop. I recommend not using quickening zephyr and swoop at the same time, by the way, because if you do that, your swoop will not go as far. You will go a very small distance. You will go whoop instead of go woo. There you go. Those are my, you know, just to, you know, quantify distance with sound effects. Whoop and whoo. So there, take that for whatever it is. But yeah, Entangle is great. And we'll talk a little bit now in the tips and ticks. No, we don't want tips and ticks. We don't want ticks at all. We want tips and tricks. So, some tricks I want to talk about are a really neat combo you can do. I discovered this really cool combo kind of accidentally. I was on a point and I was fighting someone and I managed to use counterattack, which is kind of a block. It's a block that it works similarly to warrior blocks, sort of. So like if you're attacked from range and you're using this block, it will continue blocking. It will not stop blocking unless that person comes up and uses a physical melee attack. If you get by a melee attack with this skill, or if they're in range of the block, you will do a cripple threat, or you'll do a counterattack. Like again, a counterattack, and you will just like attack them and kick them and knock them back. You can also, you know, activate it again if you really want to get some cripple off. But what happened was I was fighting an Ellie, and it was a dagger Ellie. I was like, oh man, I can't win this. This is not gonna happen. But I managed to. He attacked me with some skill, and I had counterattack up. He was in range, so I knocked him back. It did a bunch of damage. I was like, okay, so I swapped to to longbow, and I used point blank shot, and he went, that was a double CC with lots of damage and just rapid fire, and he died. I was like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. I feel so pro right now, the best ranger ever. That was really cool. CC chains, so you can do some cool CC chains with great sword and longbow, which just makes them really gives them really good synergy together. Along with using your entangle, if you want to get a good, like, if you want to get a guaranteed, like, hilt bash stun, you can entangle someone, go behind them, and hilt bash them and maul. I recommend, if you really want to maul someone, dazing them, using hilt bash first is priority. Like, getting that daze or stun off allows you to get maul off, because if you daze someone, they can't dodge. If you daze, or I don't think they can dodge, because dazing, I think it stops people from dodging. I can't dodge when I daze for some, I'm dazed, so I guess that's how it happens. I know everything about PvP and how it works. This game, I know it all. If you get that stun off, you get that maul. Maul is really the big damage dealer for great swords, so I mean, but by all means, do not, like, focus. Again, don't focus too much on the maul. Don't focus too much on the hilt bash. You want to use them at proper times. You don't want to, like, I gotta get this maul off, otherwise I don't win the fight. Really, all you're really gonna happen is, like, you're gonna lose the fight if you keep trying to win the fight. With Rangers, you gotta, like, look at it a way, like, I gotta not win to win. That's the mentality that I've come into with playing Ranger. You gotta stop winning. Gotta stop winning so I can win this fight. And that's how it works. Like, you just gotta keep them away. You just gotta keep people away from you and use your longbow as much as possible, because that's your main source of damage. Again, like I said before, swooping is important. The other important thing, the other tip I can give you guys, and this is where I'll talk about pets right now. If you've been waiting to learn about pets, this is where you learn it now. So, the way that pets work is that you can swap them hitting your F1 skill or whatever, or you can swap them by hitting whatever key bind you've set it to. I have it to my number 3 on my third button on my mouse. You can swap your pet, and it's my wolf over there. I'll just close that. There's a wolf now. You can swap between 2 pets, and you get a selection of different pets. Actually, I probably should have included this in the build, but I didn't even... I haven't. This ranger is kind of a weird monster when it comes to PvP guide builds, because I didn't even think about the pets. So we'll talk about the pets in this portion. So I bring the river drake and the wolf, the wolf. So I bring the river drake and the wolf for 2 specific reasons, and these are the reasons. 1, the river drake does a lot of damage. It does so much damage. This attack, lightning breath, does so much damage. It's incredible, because it hits multiple times and it bounces between people, so it can just, like, it's a lightning attack that bounces between people and it does a bunch of damage. They also do a really cool, a really hard-hitting, like a tail swipe attack that does, like, has a huge base damage. And I bring the wolf because it has a fear. So this is where the tip comes in, and this is where we'll go back to our specialization, going back and forth between window panes. This is where Beastly Warden comes into play, because this is the thing I found out. So taunt, the way that it works, if you don't know what taunt is it makes your opponent attack you, or whoever is applying the taunt, that foe will attack them. So if you use a skill like the lightning breath, the foe will be attracted to the river drake, and he'll just get all of his breath off in one go. Just, like, do that. The other cool synergy is with the wolf, it's kind of like a double whammy. So you taunt people around, and then the wolf will fear them away. So it's a double stun, like a double CC basically. And not only that, the wolf also has a knockdown leap attack, which is also really useful if you're in a 1v1 situation. But still, that's the really cool synergy. I found out, and these are the 2 best options, I believe. You could also, instead of the river drake, if you really wanted more like CC control, you could take like I think it's the Black Widow spider or the jungle spider. That's what jungle spider has, an attack that immobilizes, so you can get like a guaranteed immobilize off. Or you could bring the hound, the Crichton Drake Hound, which has an immobilize shout or howl. It's on a 16-second cooldown, so it's kind of a neat synergy there. You know, you can play around with the pets as much as you want, but I prefer the river drake named Mr. Squiggles and my wolf, Jeffrey. So that's the synergy with the pets. And you can use this taunt. Use this taunt whenever you need, like, to get off guaranteed stuff. So you can taunt. Another cool trick is you can, like, taunt with your pet. And if you get the taunt off, you go behind, hilt bash them or whatever. Or if you need to, like, get them off of you, you have your pet attack them and kind of CC them and point blank shot them. Using it to control your opponent is I think is the best way to think about it. If you want to get off damage, fine, but I think, like, using your pet and its taunt to control your opponent around the field or around wherever you're fighting is probably the most important thing. Just learning how to CC them with that and CC them with your other skills. The last tip I have for you guys is that, and this is only my preference. Really, this is my preference. I'm going to share it with you and see if you would rather like this or not. I keep my pet always on passive. And this is my reasoning. I know any expert ranger who watches it looking for a new build, they're like, oh god, no, don't put it on passive. I put my on passive. And this is my reasoning is I want my pet alive and the problem is, like, if any person attacks me while my pet is in aggressive mode or guard mode, if anything hits me, my pet will instantly go, who is that? And just, like, go attack him. I don't want that. I want my pet to stay alive because what happens usually with my pet is on guard, they will go off and wander into the fight and die. And they'll be on death and I'll be in combat. I can't swap and I can't get them to regen. I don't want that to happen. I want to have my pet on command. I want to have them there when I'm in trouble or when I need them. So keeping them alive is my #1 priority, in my opinion. And this is how I play Ranger. So if you do a different way, it's fine. But this is just, a little bit of tip. Keep it on passive. So, for example, if I'm sitting up on the ledge, whatever map, and a thief comes by, and I'm just like, oh crap, I can just have my pet attack him and taunt him, point blank shot, swoop away, and get away. That's one instance. You can also entangle. You can taunt, entangle, hit bash, maul, run away, or whatever. Hit and run, whatever you want to do. Like, it's just having the pet there on command is just, I think, so important. I think way too many rangers spend too much time just letting their pet go wander and go off and attack things, whatever they want to attack. And definitely, if you want to use your pet in a team situation, like if they're in a fight and you're like targeting one person, like, okay, I'm gonna taunt them now, and you taunt them because the taunt is instant, basically. And you're like, okay, and then everyone can kind of collaborate on that, cooperation, communication, stuff like that. That's another way to think about it, but I think that having the pet on passive, keeping it alive and ready to go whenever you need it is more important than having it just like go and randomly attack things. So that's the Ranger, is all as much as I could think of to talk about. If there's anything extra you think like, oh man, you forgot about this thing, or man, that's stupid, tell me about it in the comments, or mail me in game, or hit me up on Twitter and say, anything like that. Again, I want to emphasize Twitter because I have a new, if you kept up with all the videos, I put up a video this weekend telling you about my new stream schedule, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Go check that out. I'll put a link in the description below about that. And I do recommend for anyone who consistently follows me and watches, or anyone who follows me on Twitter and watches me on Twitter, to follow me on Twitch. I mean, anyone who follows me on Twitch and watches me stream, go to Twitter, follow me on Twitter so that you can find out whenever I'm streaming on the weekends. Some days I put that schedule out, and sometimes I have to change just like slightly for certain things because life things that happen. I'm in school, so things might change a little bit, but that's the schedule for now. That's the schedule it's going to be. And Twitter and stuff. Again, any comments, I want to hear them. I can't wait to see them. I hope you enjoy the build, and if you try it out, hope you have fun. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.